guys. Sorry for disappointments. Coaching on the rules and class. But as you can imagine, he's a little busy. And so he decided to step in. Today we're starting the 9th canto. Very powerful canto. What I'd like to do, if you don't mind, I'd like to read the chapter summary first. And then we'll go through the Sanskrits and in the first verse. And there's about 5 verses before we get to the purport. So we'll just read through we'll do a verse on the board, then we'll go through the main verses, and we'll read the purport. The reason why I'd like to read the chapter summary is that it introduces some topics that I think would be good to discuss today, which aren't mentioned in the report. A little louder.
With your heart.
With my heart. My heart is very small, it's stone-like, so we'll see how it goes. We'll test this first. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. So the 9th canto is called Liberation, which is a very appropriate topic. There we are. Welcome back. Can I have more bass, please? My voice has no bass. Otherwise it's going to be tinny and we'll get feedback. And no reverb, no echo. Thank you so much. This reminds me from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Kula, what's his name? Kula Asia? I could never pronounce that name. Kola Vesha, yes. He used to make these cups, right? And he would sell them and make whatever he made, half he would donate to worship the Ganges. So, okay, 9th canto called Liberation. Very important canto. We'll get into the details. We just want to read the chapter summary first. It's not too long. It's only like 4 paragraphs. The chapter is called King Sudyumna Becomes a Woman. Very appropriate for the current day and age that we're living in now, but I'm not going to cover that topic too much. Chapter summary. The chapter describes how Sudyumna became a woman and how the dynasty of Vishvasvata Manu was amalgamated with the Samavamsha, the dynasty coming from the moon. By the desire of Maharaj Parikshit, Shukadeva Goswami told about the dynasty of Vaivasvata Manu, who was formerly King Satyavrata, the ruler of Dravida. While describing this dynasty, he also described how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, while lying down in the waters of devastation, gave birth to Lord Brahma from the lotus generated from his navel. From the mind of Lord Brahma, Marichi was generated, and his son was Kashyapa. From Kashyapa through Aditi, Vivasvan was generated, and from Vivasvan came Shraddhadev Manu, who was born from the womb of Samkhya. Shraddhadev's wife, Shraddha, gave birth to 10 sons, such as Ikshvaku and Nriga. Nriga, there you go. Latvia, Nriga is named after one of his sons. Nriga? I gotta pronounce it properly. No? The name of your city is Nriga, no?
Oh, okay.
Yes. So your city is named after a personality from
Jan.
Satyayug. Shraddhadev, or Vaivasvata Manu, the father of Maharaj Ikshvaku, was sonless before Ikshvaku's birth. But by the grace of the great sage Vashishta, he performed a yajna to satisfy Mitra and Varusha. Then, although Vaivasvata Manu wanted a son, by the desire of his wife, he got a daughter named Ila. Manu, however, was not satisfied with the daughter. Consequently, for Manu's satisfaction, the great sage Vashishta prayed for Ila to be transformed into a boy. And his prayers was fulfilled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, Ila became a beautiful young son named Sudyumna. Once upon a time, Sudyumna went on tour with his ministers. At the foot of the mountain Sumeru, there was a forest named Sukumara. And as soon as they entered the forest, they were all transformed into women. When Maharaj Parikshit inquired from Shukadeva Goswami about the reason for this transformation, Shukadeva Goswami described how Sujuna, being transformed into a woman, accepted Buddha, the son of the moon, as her husband, and had a son named Pururava. By the grace of Lord Shiva, Sujuna received the benediction that he would live 1 month as a woman and 1 month as a man. Thus he regained his kingdom and had 3 sons, named Utkala, Gaya, and Vimala, who were all very religious. Thereafter, he entrusted his kingdom to Pururava and took the order of Vanaprastha life. So today's verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Canto 9, Liberation, Chapter 1, King Sujuna becomes a woman. Text 1. Shri Rajavacha Mandatarani Sarvani Tvavyoktani Shutani Me Viryanyananta Viryasya Aristatra Kritani Cha Mandatarani Sarvani Tvayoktani Shutani Me Viryanyananta Viryasya Aristatra Kritani Cha Mandatarani Sarvani Tvayoktani Shutani Me Viryanyananta Viryasya Aristatra Kritani Cha
Manvantarani Sarvani Vayoktani Shutani Me Viryanyananta Viryasya Aristatra Kritani Cha Shri Rajavacha Manvantarani Sarvani Vayoktani Shutani Me Viryanyananta Viryasya Aristatra Kritani Cha
Manvantarani Sarvani
Vayoktani Shutani Me Viryanyananta Viryasya Aristatra Kritani Cha
Mataji's.
Shri Rajavacha
Manvantarani Sarvani Vayoktani Shutani Me Viryanyananta Viryasya Aristatra Kritani Cha
Word for word, please repeat. Shri Rajavacha King Parikshit said, Manvantarani,
Manvantarani,
all about the periods
all about periods
of the various manus.
of the various manus.
Sarvani,
Sarvani,
all of them.
all of them.
Tvaya,
Tvaya,
by you.
by you.
Bhuktani,
Bhuktani,
have been described.
have been described.
Shrutani,
Shrutani,
have been listened to.
have been listened to.
Me,
Me,
by me.
by me.
Viryani,
Viryani,
wonderful activities.
wonderful activities.
Ananta,
Ananta,
Viryasya,
Viryasya,
of the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
of the Supreme Personality of God,
who has unlimited potency.
who has unlimited potency.
Hare,
Hare,
of the Supreme Lord.
of the Supreme Lord.
Hari,
Hari,
Tatra,
Tatra,
in those Manvantara periods.
in the Manvantara period.
Kritani,
Kritani,
which have been performed.
which have been performed.
Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Translation. King Parikshit said, My Lord, Shukadev Goswami, you have elaborately described all the periods of the various manus and within those periods the wonderful activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has unlimited potency. I am fortunate to have heard all of this from you. Text 2 and 3. Satyavrata, the saintly king of Dravida Desha, who received spiritual knowledge at the end of the last millennium by the grace of the Supreme, later became Vaivasvata Manu, the son of Vivasvami, in the next Mandata period of Manu. I have received this knowledge from you. I also understand that such kings as Ikshvaku were his sons, as you have already explained. O greatly fortunate Shukadev Goswami, O great Brahmana, kindly describe to us separately the dynasties and characteristics of all those kings, for we are always eager to hear such topics from you. Kindly tell us about the abilities, text 5. Kindly tell us about the abilities of all the celebrated kings born in the dynasty of Vaivasvata Manu, including those who have already passed, those who may appear in the future, and those who exist at present. Text 6. Sutta Goswami said, when Shukadev Goswami, the greatest knower of religious principles, was thus requested by Maharaj Parikshit in the assembly of all the scholars learned in Vedic knowledge, he then proceeded to speak. Text 7. Shukadev Goswami continued, O king, subduer of your enemies, now hear from me in great detail about the dynasty of Manu. I shall explain as much as possible, although one could not say everything about it, even in 100 years. Text 8 with purport. The Transcendental Supreme Person, the Supersoul of all living entities, who are in different statuses of life, high and low, existed at the end of the millennium, when neither this manifested cosmos nor anything else but him existed. Purport. Taking the proper position from which to describe the dynasty of Manu, Shukadev Goswami begins by saying that when the entire world is inundated, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead exists, and nothing else. Shukadev Goswami will now describe how the Lord creates other things, one after another. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Kurati Vacham Bhangam Gayate Grim Yat Vibhatamaham Vande Shri Gurunti Yatharanam. So a lot of verses. 8 verses. And generally speaking, what's the stereotype? This is the section of, these sections of Bhagavatam is usually where people speed read. okay, then there was such and such married such and such from the womb of such and such, and da 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 da. And they had 4 children, and da 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 da. There's actually one section of the Bhagavatam, I think it's a dynasty section. It goes through all of the dynasties. And then right at the end, the Shruti follows that anyone who has read all these dynasties is guaranteed to go back to Godhead. Anyone who skipped that is like, oh really? Go back a couple of pages, kind of reading everything again. So why is Maharaj Parikshit asking this? I mean, we've heard so much nectar. 7th canto has been passed through. We've heard about Prahlad Maharaj. 8th canto has passed through. We've heard about Maharaj Ambarish. We've heard about Gajendra. Why now is Maharaj Parikshit asking, please tell me about the lineage and dynasties of Manus? Maharaj Parikshit is the perfect person to receive the Bhagavatam. He is the perfect person for asking these questions. And Shukadeva Goswami is the perfect reciter of the Bhagavatam. So it's not by chance that Maharaj Parikshit is asking this question. It's not as though Maharaj Parikshit is just being polite, saying, oh, everything that you say is nectar. Oh, Gurudev, everything it's all nectar from you. Actually, I remember one story. One devotee I know, was a disciple of Shiva Ram Maharaj. And it was Shiva Ram Maharaj's Vyasa Puja. And Maharaj had 1,008 preparations. He has a lot of disciples. And they're all very wealthy. And so this devotee was in line. Maharaj was handing out prasadam. Just a little bit of each preparation. You get one type of preparation. And so the devotee I know was eyeing the sweets. And so as he's approaching, he's looking at the sweets, hoping that Maharaj is going to give him one bowl of sweets. And Maharaj is watching him and can see where he's looking. And he picks up one of the bitter okra, hands it to him. Everything from Gurudev is nectar. But Maharaj Parikshit is not being facetious here. What is the benefit of asking this question? Who comes in the lineage of these Manus? Who comes at the end of the 9th canto? Krishna and Balaram. Not only actually Krishna at the end of the canto, but Lord Ramachandra in the middle of the canto. Maharaj Parikshit knows what he's asking. He's trying to get to the point. We're here to hear about Krishna. That's why all of this assembly is happening. He knows that from the 1st canto. When I sit on the Vyasasan, all the verses just disappear. Savai samparo dhammo yato bhaktiya dokshite. So, the supreme goal of life is to render service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nothing else should be the goal of our activities. He knows why he's there. He's not just asking a random question to Shukadeva Goswami. He knows what will be the result of hearing about these lineages. We will get to Krishna, and then we'll hear about Krishna. And he knows that everyone needs to hear about Krishna, because before Shukadeva Goswami arrived, all of these sages and saintly persons came, and they're all giving, not all of them, because Vyasadeva was there, and Narada Muni was there, but some of them were giving him different opinions of what he should do with the last 7 days of his life. And not everything was based around Krishna. So he knows the people in this assembly also need to hear about Krishna. So he asks this question to get to the point. That's how Maharaj Parikshit is the perfect person to hear this. But he's also perfect in his relationship with Shukadeva Goswami. Because he doesn't just suddenly start the 9th canto. You've mentioned Vaivasvata Manu. You've mentioned Satyavrat Maharaj. You become Vaivasvata Manu. I know in his lineage that Krishna appears. Can you please tell me about Krishna? He doesn't do that. He asks to hear about the lineage. By hearing about the lineage, we will get more information, more nectar that will prepare us for Krishna at the right time. He doesn't try and jump. I mean, he could have asked it in the 1st canto. He knows who Krishna is. Krishna was a friend of his grandfather. He's heard stories, I'm sure. He doesn't jump. And by hearing about the lineages, we get to the real purpose of the 9th canto. Now, I've heard this from a brahmachari in New Zealand. He had this observation about the 9th canto. I haven't heard it anywhere else, but I think it's a very fair observation. So don't take this as Shastra, what I'm about to say, but take it as a nice observation. The 9th canto is filled with pastimes of people struggling with sex desire. We have Maharaj Yayati, who has to, he gets cursed by his father-in-law. Not Sugar, what's his name? What's his father-in-law's name? My God, what's the name of the guru of the demons? Shukracharya. One who's expert in discharging semen. That's his father-in-law. And by breaking the one rule his father-in-law gave him in marrying his daughter, which was don't have children with anybody else. He broke that rule by, I won't go into the full details of the pastime because that's for someone to speak about later. By breaking that rule, his father-in-law curses him. You will lose your youth. But he's so attached to sex that he begs, and even his wife begs, please give him his youth back. We're not satisfied yet. And so he trades his youth with his youngest son. Actually, his eldest son is Yadu, in which Krishna's lineage comes from, and that's where we get the name the Yadavas. So there's this pastime, dealing with sex desire. We have Maharaj Pururava, who appears again later on in the 11th canto from memory, in his prayers after he gets bewildered, but oh my God, I'm forgetting everybody's names. Urvasi. Urvasi, he becomes attached to Urvasi and actually introduces Treta Yuga because he's so attached to her that he performs yajna to try to attain her. So we have so many personalities. Even here, we have people changing their gender. We have a constant struggle of dealing with sex desire. So the observation that the devotee made in the 9th canto, that so many people are struggling with sex desire, that we have to overcome sex desire if we want to achieve Krishna. Because who appears after the 9th canto? It's Krishna. So therefore, the 9th canto is specifically dealing with this topic of lust. Not only, because we obviously have lineages. We have Lord Ramachandra as well, of course. So, but who is also an example of conquered sex desire, actually. So, in order to, if we really want to achieve Krishna, we have to overcome this lust. Now, obviously, this is a circumstance. Sometimes you're asked to give class, and the person who really needs to hear the class is the person who's speaking. Is that the topics that we bring up are actually addressed for the person who's speaking. Lust is such a heavy topic. But I'm not saying this as though you all need to overcome this and become like me, who's free from lust. Material desire is so strong. But it is something that we need to address, overcome, and relinquish if we want to achieve Krishna. And the idea that we may be even able to consider ourselves advanced until we've actually overcome lusts is fantasy. We may get some taste by the mercy of Guru and Gauranga. We may have some opportunity to experience some transcendental bliss, whether it be in the association of devotees in kirtans, whether it be through mercy of transcendental cooks who might make some amazing prasadam, or it might be just be in a sangha of a tirtha, like New Mayapur or even Vrindavan or Mayapur, we may get some semblance, some shadow ecstasy. This shadow ecstasy is by association. It is not by our own elevation, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as I've heard from my spiritual master. By the mercy of association, we may get some taste. The danger is when we start thinking that that taste is coming from me, from my sadhana, my elevation. And we start looking for that taste. Instead, what we should be looking for is pleasing Guru and Gauranga. By pleasing them, taste will come. But more importantly, by pleasing them, lust will be relinquished. Lust is something that we do. Sorry. There's so many things to cover on this topic that it's kind of hard to put my thoughts into a sequence. There is an idea that is proposed by certain gurus that we need to engage in this lust in order to be fully satisfied of it. It's actually mentioned in Bhagavatam. It's the Daksha, when he curses Narada Muni. He makes this false argument. When Narada Muni helps his sons go back to Godhead, and Narada Muni comes to see Lord Daksha in kind of like a celebratory mood. Like, can you believe it? Your children were meant to go into the Grihastha ashram and take on all these responsibilities, but now they're going back to Godhead. Isn't it great? And Daksha's furious. And he says to Narada Muni, one cannot make proper spiritual advancement without first fully satisfying his material desires. Only then will he be able to elevate himself free out of the material nature. Not realizing that his children had been elevated out of material nature, free of their material desires, without engaging in their material desires. So his own argument is being refuted by his own children in their actions, their achar. So then Daksha curses Narada Muni. You will not be able to stay in one place for more than a moment. Narada took it as a blessing. Good, I won't be attached. So we can see how this type of consciousness can be contaminating to the point where we can actually curse a pure devotee. I'm reminded of one story, but I'll get to the story in a second. I want to address this a little bit more. So there is this idea that by engaging in material desires, we will become free of them because we will become so disgusted with them. This is addressed a little bit with Maharaj Yati, because he, after so many years of engaging in lustful activities with his wife, finally turns to her and says, you know, I'm still not satisfied. I exchanged a curse with my son. I got my son's youth and gave him my old age. And I'm still not satisfied. I think it's time I inquire into the absolute truth. This is what they think people will attain. However, it's dangerous because it's not the safest way of gaining knowledge. There's this expression in English which usually people only know the first half, which is that experience is the best teacher. If anyone's ever heard that, experience is the best teacher. That's actually only half the quote. Experience is the best teacher because a fool learns no other way. Nobody says the last half. But actually, experience is the worst way of learning. Hearing is the best way of learning. We don't need to be Maharaj Yati. We don't need to engage in sensual desires in order to fulfill or become disgusted with material nature and then inquire into the absolute truth. We can read about it in the 9th canto. All of these people who go through so much suffering in order to become, by reading about their experiences, we can learn from them to realize, it's not worth it. It's better just to inquire and surrender now to the absolute truth. So this is where I want to tell the story. This is a story that comes from Prabhupada. So I don't know where it is in Shastra. It may not be a Shastra story. It's not in Bhagavatam. But I really like it. I read it in one of Shruti Kirti Prabhu's books. So there is anyone who knows me has probably already heard this story. So for those who already heard it, I apologize. But I think it's an amazing story. There's a king, and the king has an assembly of Brahmanas. And he asks the assembly of Brahmanas, why is it so difficult to become free of the material energy? Why is it so difficult to get out of Maya? And the Brahmanas start giving him some answers. And he's not really satisfied. It makes sense, but there's something missing. And in the assembly, one blind man walks in with a stick, using the stick to try and see his way. And everyone can see he's coming forward because he has something he wants to say. And there's a murmuring. They're kind of mocking him a little bit. What does a blind man know? But the king, he is broad-minded. So he says, bring him forward. If he has something to say, let him speak. So the blind man comes forward. But as he comes forward, he trips. And as he trips, he falls and loses his stick. And everyone starts to laugh. That silly blind man, what is he doing? So he's feeling on the ground, trying to find his stick. And instead of the stick, he finds a pillar, like one of these that we have here. And he uses the pillar to stand. Then when he stands, and he's at full height, he holds onto the pillar very tightly and starts shouting, let me go, let me go, let me go! And everyone starts to laugh. But the king, he notices. The blind man, is answering his question. We are blind in the material world, and we're lost. We're searching for something to hold us up, to give us support. And we find Maya, very nicely, very friendly, happily holding us up. But we are holding on to Maya. She's not holding on to us. We are holding on to her with our attachments. We are attached to a particular thing. And we're seeking for it, searching for it. And so long as we're getting that, we stay attached. But the problem is that Maya never really comes just as what we like. Maya is very variegated. She comes as many things, which means she also comes as suffering. But we have this half-hand logic. We want the good half of Maya, the times when we like her. But we don't want the bad half, the suffering, the temporary nature, the ignorance. And so we hold on to her, trying to keep these good feelings. Meanwhile, we're getting kicked and beaten, punched. And then we blame other things for all the suffering, our enemies. And we try and conquer over our enemies so that way we can have fewer enemies or more control over our enemies to try and increase our control of our enjoyment. Instead, what we do, we increase our attachment. We increase our grip on that pillar. Instead, what we really need to do is to take faith, to let go, and I used to know this, to turn our face away from Maya, to turn it back towards Krishna. That's the leap of faith. Because we've been staring so long into Maya that this is now all we know. And we're scared. We're scared to turn our face to Krishna. Because what happens if he's just like Maya? At least this I know. This goodness, whatever I'm feeling is good. At least that I know. Okay, there's suffering. But come on, you've got to take some suffering with the good, right? In order to really make sure you're enjoying, you've got to know what suffering's like, right? Anyone who's done book distribution has probably heard that argument. You've got to suffer a little bit. Then you really know what pleasure is. In which case, one devotee once said, when a person presented that argument, he said, okay, in order to have a good day, and make sure you have a good day, do you punch yourself in the morning? Make sure you experience that pain so then you really know what the pleasure is for the day? No. No one does that. So we need to let go. Letting go is a gradual process. And it's what is the purpose behind all these systems that we have, like Varnashram. Varnashram, not a topic I want to discuss, but Varnashram is not meant to be a goal, it's just meant to be a system of letting go of the material energy, providing stability, engaging our natures, but increasing our trust in Krishna. Because all of our activities become Krishna-centered, or, as Prabhupada would say, Krishnized. This is the purpose, the idea of when you touch a copper wire to electricity, it becomes electricity. When you touch an iron rod to fire, it becomes fire. Our activities, we want to be Krishnized. So all we're doing is connecting our activities to Krishna, so that way we can increase our trust. And by increasing our trust, it becomes easier to turn our face back towards Krishna. And any activity that does not increase our trust, or promotes some sort of artificial feeling, should be rejected. And that's the purpose from Nectar of Devotion. The one rule that is from Shastra is to accept everything that's in service to Krishna and reject anything that isn't. So if something might make us feel good, but doesn't actually help us become Krishna conscious, it should be rejected, because it's increasing our attachment. And that which is a little bitter, is a little difficult, but increases our connection to Krishna, should be accepted. And by seeing the results of that, will increase our trust. Once we have trust, we'll have faith. Once we have faith, we'll develop love. It's a gradual process. And everything is happening simultaneously. There's this idea, Ado, Shraddha, Bhajana, Kriya, Sadhu Sangha, Natha-Nivritti. Sometimes there's this idea that it's like a platform, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But it doesn't work like that, actually. Everything is happening at once. As you increase Shraddha, there is a Natha-Nivritti in there. And there's a very, very small piece of Prema. But as you go deeper through the process, you release all your anartas, you get closer and closer to Prema. But your Shraddha still increases. It's still there. It's not like left behind, like you move house or something, you leave copings. And this is such a problem with brahmacharis, actually. Whenever they go traveling, they leave stuff behind. We don't leave our faith behind as we get closer to Prema. Everything increases. Until ultimately we get to the spiritual world. Then there's no anartas, obviously. And everything's there. Ruchi, sakti, it's all in perfection. So this canto is an opportunity for us to deal with our material desires, our lusts. By dealing with our lust, we are assured of achieving the goal. And the last chapter of this canto introduces Krishna. So it is an opportunity. Oh, there's even a family tree. Well, that's nice. It's an opportunity for us to realize that Krishna is available to us. We just have to do the work. There's a quote that I shouldn't say a quote. There's a devotee in New Zealand who said something that I thought was really interesting. He said, people want purification. People want purity without purification. So we want the goal without going through the process of achieving it, which is technically Rajagun. Sweet in the beginning, poison or bitter at the end. So we want the result in the beginning, without actually going through the effort. So what we do, we want Krishna Prema without having to go through the process of giving up material desires. It would be so much easier to give up material desires if I had Prema. Now, giving up material desires is only 50% us, really. It comes through mercy and grace. But we just have to open ourselves up to that grace. It comes through sadhu-sangha. It comes through blessings of the senior Vaishnavas. It comes through effort, attentive japa. The point I'm trying to make though today is that it's worth the effort. And I mean, we can make the more sincere point, which is that it's not just sex desire. This is not a brahmachari class. Lust does not mean just one thing. Lust manifests in many ways, including trying to enjoy devotional service. There's a very graphic description that's used in Manasa Shiksha, where it's talking about, I don't have much time left. It's talking about different ways or different results that come from practicing devotional service incorrectly, with the wrong attitude. And one thing it brings up there specifically is that sometimes there is this wonderful glow, this hot energy that comes from practicing devotional service. It's a warm feeling that you just want to bathe in. This is described as like bathing in donkey urine. Donkey urine apparently, I've never experienced it, but donkey urine is apparently very, very hot. Like a hot shower that you get if you wait long enough in the guest house. You get a nice hot shower. I've never had a hot shower since I've been here in the castle. But it's like bathing in donkey urine. And the reason it's described like that is that what is the goal of that moment, of that bathing? Is to enjoy that feeling. So we may feel ourselves becoming so advanced in our devotional practice. Why? Because I feel so good. Oh, I feel so good reading Bhagavatam. Oh yes, the Sanskrit is so nice, especially when I sing it. You know, Utteshamaya. Oh yes. You know, or prasadam is so nice. Oh, you know. I meditate often on New Zealand milk. I miss New Zealand milk. New Zealand sweet rice, kheer. You know, New Zealand cows with the fresh grass. Ahimsa milk. You know, all the kirtans. Oh, I love it. You know, Lokanath Maharaj kirtans. Ahimsa Prabhu. Yes, sounds so good. But then when someone else leads, oh, I don't like this Prabhu's kirtans. It plays out of time. It doesn't sound nice. I don't like this prasadam. There's not enough salt. So what are we actually experiencing? This is what I mean, is that lust does not necessarily just come as one particular thing. We can be free of sex desire, but still be experiencing lust if we're trying to enjoy our devotional service. So the goal is not to try and enjoy Krishna. The goal is trying to please Krishna. And in pleasing Krishna, you will enjoy. This is what it means by watering the root of the tree. All the leaves and plants are nourished. By pleasing Krishna, you please all the devotees. You are also a devotee. He will please you too. You're connected like a limb. You know, you cut off the finger, probably not an appropriate example, I'm sorry. But if you cut off the finger, that finger loses its all nourishment. But if the finger is attached, it receives that nourishment through that connection, through our connection with Krishna. We receive that nourishment, that pleasure, that happiness. So by trying to please Krishna, now we don't know, I don't know who Krishna is. So who is the manifestation of Krishna for me? My Guru. Our Guru is a representative of Krishna. By pleasing Guru, we become pleased. By ensuring that he is satisfied, we can become satisfied. We just have to develop that consciousness, that attitude, and not seek out material enjoyment. If you seek material enjoyment in devotional service, you become a demigod. It's very nice. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of pleasure for many, many years and a lot of attachment. We become prakrita bhaktas, who I've heard, again, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, are barely devotees. They're prakrita, they're materialistic. But we give them the name, Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives them the name bhakta, just so that the senior devotees will actually associate with them. But they're not really devotees. So we don't want to develop this materialistic attitude in our devotional service. Our goal is to please Guru and Gauranga. By pleasing them, we just have to develop that trust. We will also become pleased. And we have experienced that. Everyone's experienced that. We've done some austerity. We've pushed ourselves. We've sacrificed our mind, our desires, sometimes our digestion, fasting for so long that by the time you actually sit down, you probably don't even want to eat. And you're satisfied. Intrinsically, you can notice it. But externally, meaning like the mind and intelligence, you can tell you're frustrated, you're angry, you're moody. Sometimes I used to fast, my hands would start to shake. I'd be easily agitated. But if you've done a large yajna, some service, you can feel that satisfaction. Even though it doesn't make sense. You don't really feel happy. That's satisfaction. That's Krishna's pleasure. We want to cultivate that, sacrificing our desires to ensure Guru and Gauranga is pleased. In a balanced way, gradual way. I'm not trying to be too fanatical. But this is what I gained from the ninth canto. I don't really know much about the Manvataras and their descendants and the lineage, so I apologize for not really speaking on the topic of today. And I've gone over time, and I'm very sorry. If anyone has any comments or corrections, please share. Yes.
So this is the storytelling of the lineage and so on, and it gives a great benediction at the end. And I wanted to know, Krishna says, worship of my devotee are superior to me. So is it the name of the devotees are superior to the name of the Lord?
No. Because there's no shastra to say that. I've got no reference at all to make that jump.
But worshipping my devotees means...
Yeah, but how do we worship the devotees? And actually, let's go back a step. You said is the name of the devotees higher than the name of the Lord? What's your name? Is that your name?
It's the name of the Lord.
So, where's your name?
Some can be called something else.
But what is that something else? I mean, Prabhupada makes this point in a conversation with, what's the name of the devotee who wrote Lilamrita? Satsvarupa Maharaj. I'm sorry, my brain is useless. There's a conversation with Satsvarupa Maharaj back when he was Bhakta, there in the Lilamrita, and Prabhupada makes a point that actually every name describes the quality of the Lord. And he's going through the room, what's your name? And one says, my name is, I think one of them was Paul. And he says, what does Paul mean? Paul means rock. And Prabhupada says, yes, Krishna is the rock on which everything is built, the foundation. What is your name? Simon. What does Simon mean? Simon means king. Yes, Krishna is the king. So actually every name is a description of Krishna. Where is the name of, like what's Graham? Do you know what Graham means, my Karmi name? Graham means of the hamlets. Hamlets or the moors. It's a region of England. Is that name higher than Krishna? Krishna meaning all attracted? Where is the name for the devotee that isn't the name for the Lord? The devotee, worship of the devotee is higher than worship of Krishna, is a state of consciousness regarding humility. It's about recognizing that I can't approach Krishna directly. Who am I? I'm nobody. I'm 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. I have no power. I'm not the controller. I'm not the enjoyer. I'm a blade of grass, maybe, in the spiritual world. Who am I to approach Krishna? But I can approach his devotee. And through approaching his devotee, I can please Krishna. Through that cultivation of humility, I can attract Krishna. But I'm not approaching Krishna. I'm acting in such a way that Krishna wants to approach me. So it's a state of consciousness. But there's no shastra I've heard that the name of a devotee can be higher than the name of Krishna. There was a question that was raised about there's no offense in chanting Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. There are no offenses. You can't. It's the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. You can't commit an offense when chanting that. We have the 10 offenses against the holy name of the Hare Krishna mantra. There's no offense in chanting the Jai Shri Krishna mantra. So why don't we chant that? Why don't we have Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhara? There's no offense. Devotees asked Prabhupada, why don't we chant that mantra? Prabhupada said, because Lord Chaitanya has asked us to chant Hare Krishna. We follow his instruction. He said chant Hare Krishna. We don't make up our own way, because that's going to be better for me. No offense. We follow the instructions. So, by following the instruction chanting Hare Krishna, we get the purification. Through the association of Krishna, we get purified. I hope that answers the question. Prabhu?
Oh yeah, I had a question. Well, I would like also to add a little
Oh
bit.
yeah, sure.
So also, when we say worshipping devotees, I guess it meaning we're serving devotees. And service means satisfying devotees. Who's going to be satisfied if we're repeating their names? I mean, it's the
Yeah, that's true.
genuine devotee.
It doesn't actually bring pleasure to them, so therefore you're doing a disservice.
But you meditate on them.
Yeah. But I think it still gets to the point that there's no name to chant. I don't know a name. I mean, you can chant Graham if you want to. But it's not gonna...
No, but on multiple examples, the Lord chanted the name of his devotees.
Yes, there is a pastime where Lord Chaitanya was chanting the names of the gopis.
Yeah, Amrita, Srinivas.
Yeah, sure. But, I mean, he's chanting in separation of their association. And we can meditate on them. But your question specifically was around the point of, is the name higher than the name of the Lord? And I've got no shastra to back that. So I would say the answer is no. You have?
Yeah. So when we say that with each step on the path of devotional service, the previous platform increases as well. If it increases by itself, or we need to apply more efforts to increase our shraddha, to increase our sadhusanga, etc.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's kind of like a time, place, and circumstance type of thing, because the description that's often given is of the plane taking off, and you get the rush, and then you're traveling, and it seems like nothing's happening, and then you descend, and everything's like, once you start getting to ruchi and asakti, it's game over. And apparently it's a lot easier and a lot quicker, according to Shivaram Maharaj. I think in the beginning, we're really dealing with anatta nidiptiti. And for all of us, I mean, I don't want to assume, but that's the stage that everyone really needs to work through. And at different stages of our practice, dealing with anatta nidiptiti, we may have to do different things. We may have to increase our sadhusanga, we may have to decrease our sadhusanga, because it might depend on what is required at the time. A decrease in sadhusanga might be an increase in japa. Following chatumas and just going into Nijam Bhajan, like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur setting an example there. But as a person progresses, faith is always increasing. Sadhu Sangha may not always be increasing. Bhajan Kriya should always be increasing. We should eventually get to a point where 24/7 we're always worshiping.
Sadhu Sangha can increase maybe in depth, not in quantity.
Yeah, I guess it does depend on how we define as increasing. Because Sadhu Sangha, associating with previous acharyas, singing bhajans, even if you're alone. Reading of Shastra, associating with Bhagavata. But I don't think it's a mathematical formula. I think it's more of a understanding that there are different stages of the whole sadhana process of Krishna consciousness, but it's not like rooms that you go into and leave. That they're all contained, maybe like ingredients in a kitchen, and then different amounts are applied at different stages of your practice. I don't know if that answers the question. So I'm definitely over time now. I apologize everyone. Thank you all for your tolerance. Please forgive me for offenses. Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi.
Praise Gauranga Prema Prabhu ki.
Yes. Worship him, become my devotee.